Dude, the buzzwords of an era often define that era. Hello again, everyone. I'm Eli's dad with Project Eli, where we educate, lead, and inspire. And boy, are we going through some major buzzwords today. Before I go into today's buzzwords, let's talk about some from the past that define previous eras that we've had. You know, I remember when I was just a puppy in grade school and there was a tremendous fear of atomic attack, United States versus Russia, we were always talking about the military-industrial complex, and we were talking about bomb shelters. And then later on, when I got to college, one of the major buzzwords was bogus. Hey, that's bogus, you know. Imitate means imitation, but it took on a whole new meaning when you said, oh, that's bogus, that's awful, that's terrible, you know. And then later on, in more recent history, we've talked about problems with nuclear weapons, and what was the term that we always used? Weapons of mass destruction. And we even shortened it to WMDs. People would just say WMDs, all right, especially during the Clinton administration and the Bush administration. And what about the words hippies and yuppies? Okay, yuppies is actually a ripoff, there's another word, of the generation that talked about hippies. These are words that we hardly ever use anymore. So these words, you know, define, you know, if you ask somebody that's, you know, had some seasoning in life like I have, we remember these words, and you'll remember the words that are going on today, and they do have some significant meaning at the time, and once again, they can actually define your era, and they need to be paid attention to. What are some of the words today? Well, the first one, of course, pandemic. All right, a worldwide epidemic, and something we need. You know, everything's global now. You know, there are borders, but not so much anymore. The internet has kind of eliminated borders, and our financial situation has eliminated borders. How about the word quarantine? How many people were using the word quarantine before the last couple of months, you know, in 2019? Very few were using the word quarantine. Here's another word that's very in the news today all the time. Every single day you hear it. Asymptomatic. All right, you may not have any symptoms of the disease, but you can still be a carrier of it. So, you know, this disease, you can be asymptomatic. Contagion. Boy, this virus, this invisible enemy, is very, very contagious. Be very careful, you know, wear your mask, keep your 6 feet, you know, make sure you don't get too close because it's very contagious. Contagion is another one. One of the more popular ones today, social distancing. My goodness. When did you ever hear the word social distancing? All right, well, I would hear it from women when I was trying to make friends, but not all the time. But my point is today, social distancing is one of the key phrases that's defining this particular era in our lives. Flatten the curve. Who ever said flatten the curve before? Flattening the curve means let's get, you know, the incidence of people obtaining the virus. Let's, instead of going like this, let's flatten that out. And then, you know, and right now we're on kind of a death spiral. We probably will be for the next week or two. Hopefully the curve will flatten. Fewer people will become infected, and our problem will start to be solved. But you have to be careful about complacency. That's going to be a new word, complacency, starting today. Today's Saturday. You know, I mean, I talked about complacency yesterday. We cannot become complacent when we start to look and see that fewer people are catching this, because you can catch it again in a New York minute. No pun intended with that. So let's make sure that we stay on guard and avoid complacency. And complacency can be the downfall in so many areas of life, in personal relationships, in business. And in this particular case, complacency can be deadly. Of course, what we have upcoming is the word vaccine. You're going to be hearing that word more and more and more as we go from, you know, they're saying it's going to take anywhere from 12 to 18 months. and they're trying to develop that vaccine. These are not words that we hear all the time in the course of typical conversation, but we're starting to hear them now. Once again, they define the era. And now I want to present to you a new phrase that you're going to be hearing. And that new phrase is called herd immunity. What herd immunity means is when enough people in a given population have taken an effective vaccine, that community develops what is known as herd immunity. People are more protected from getting the disease because fewer people have it. It's the same type of thing that happens with the flu. You know, we know that during the winter time, when the weather's cold, more and more people have the flu, and then once summer comes, it tends to disappear. All right, now during the winter, when you see somebody has the flu, you know, you stay away from them as much as you possibly can because you don't want to catch it. But during the summer, you don't worry about that so much because very few people have it. So I'm not really worried about somebody having the flu at that particular point in time. But then next winter, guess what? It comes back. The issue is with this particular virus, we don't know yet, because we're on such uncharted ground, what is going to happen during the summer. Is it going to continue to be contagious? This is why it's so critical for us for two things. Actually, I'm going to suggest three things, and I've suggested this before in the past. Number one, everybody's got to get the masks. You got to get the masks, all right? You see the countries like New Zealand, you see countries like South Korea that are really doing a good job with this thing. People are wearing the masks. It's helping. It's working. Please, United States government task force, get masks for everybody. I still walk around and see people without masks. You got to have the mask. Secondly, once again, I've mentioned this and I don't hear anybody saying it, but I'm going to practice it. 3 ways that you get the virus: in the mouth, in the nose, in the eyes. You've got to cover your eyes. That may mean glasses, that may mean goggles, it may mean any number of different things, but I strongly suggest that you think about that, because once again, if you're going to do the thing, you're going to stay in, you're going to keep 6 feet, you're going to do all of these right things, do all of them. All right? How big a deal is it to cover your eyes? It isn't. Do that. All right? Very, very important. All right? And the third thing is, we need to make sure that we have testing. Right now, you know, we need a tremendously large volume of testing. That's the only way we're going to find out what's going on. We have to be able to measure. And then when we get to the point where we can say we have herd immunity, when very few people have it, then there will be a feeling of safety, and we can start to begin to go back to our normal lives. So, once again, the words that are used during a particular era define that era. We soon will be coming up to, right now we're on complacency, we're coming up on vaccine, pretty soon it's going to be herd immunity. So keep this in mind, keep your discipline, and let's all lock arms together and get this thing taken care of. And because we will never end a meeting on a philosophical note, let's all get out there and charge! I'm Eli's dad.